Hey everybody, and welcome to Dude's Brunch, the late night morning talk show where four people talk about four things they found on the internet, except this week it's three of us. In honor of our 1 year anniversary as a podcast, we cut it down to just the core panel, and the three of us are going to be spending some quality time together. Here, after an entire year of dealing with me, it's Tyler Reed. Tyler, what did you have for brunch today?
I would hardly say that you're dealing with me or I'm dealing with you. I think it's more about you're dealing with me. I think if we're being real about it. For brunch today, I had a Catherine DiMartino classic, the sausage and pancakes. But yesterday, we were supposed to go to Arnold's for our Valentine's Day special lunch. Turns out Arnold's on Saturday opens at 4:30. So we went to Nada instead, and we had a Mexican brunch, and it was very small but very delicious. So, needless to say, I went home and had some snacks.
That's the secret to fine dining. Snacks. Sean, I'm so glad that you've stuck it out for an entire year. Really appreciate it. It's good to have you here, buddy. What'd you have for brunch today?
Well, today I just had coffee, but yesterday, with the more exciting brunch, Sarah and I went to Wally Waffle, which listeners and Taylor are familiar with, local
Man, I
breakfast
love
establishment
Wally
up here. And I had the churro waffles, a churro waffle, I should say, and it essentially is a Belgian waffle that is covered in pancake batter, then fried, and then covered with cinnamon sugar and powdered sugar. It is like a sugar explosion in your mouth, and I could only eat like 1/4 of it. I brought the rest home. But it was great. And Sarah had the chicken and waffles because you just can't go wrong with that meal. It's
No,
literally
you
like
really
the
can't.
perfect like nexus of all the meals put together.
I'm your host, Taylor, and for brunch this morning, I had kind of a disjointed brunch. I knew I was going to go to the gym, so I made coffee and a breakfast smoothie like I always do. And then I went to the gym, and when I came back, I was like hungrier than I thought I was going to be, so I ended up making scrambled eggs and then making the leftover egg rolls that were in my fridge. So my brunch was coffee, a smoothie, scrambled eggs, and egg rolls. It was a very weird brunch morning, but I got a really good run in, and that's all that matters.
Point of clarification here. Does anybody know why they're called egg rolls?
I'm assuming the batter is made with eggs.
Okay.
Tyler, as our resident person who looks up food things during the show, can you figure out why egg rolls are called egg rolls while we
I'm
get
on
into our
it.
first topic?
Still never found out why who invented orange icing, but that's fine.
Well, if you know who invented orange icing, or if you just want to talk to us, you can tweet at us at Dudes Brunch. That's also where you can play bingo. Our bingo board is new and improved at dudesbrunch.wordpress.com/bingo. It's full of stuff we normally talk about on the show. If we talk about something, you mark the space. If you get 5 in a row, you get a bingo. It's just like regular bingo, but if you win, Sean mails you a prize. Our first topic this week comes from Sean. Sean,
Okay.
what do you have for us?
So this week, seeing as how we're now in the throes of presidential Congress, I decided that we would look at some campaign logos because there was a statement that was made earlier on the show. I don't remember which episode it was, but Tyler said, which we'll get to at a certain point in one of my questions, that he would vote for whoever had the best campaign logo. And you know what? I wanted to find out who he was thinking of voting for because, everyone's a graphic designer. So I figured, hey, why not give it a shot? Anybody can talk about this. So we'll post the link in the show notes. But basically, it's the videos are by, how would you pronounce his name? Is it Seg Havig? And he kind of breaks down all of the logos, well, a lot of the major contenders' logos, and talks about each of them, what he likes about him, what he doesn't like about him. So yeah, I think with the exception of Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush's campaign logos, he pretty much generally hates all of them. Thought that was kind of interesting, just a side note there. But yeah, so my first
He
question.
liked Rand as well.
Oh, that's right, he did. He thought Rand's really good. So my first question is, which was your favorite logo?
So when it first made its debut, I was really not a fan. But as the months have gone on and we've seen all of the other logos, the Hillary logo is the least of the evils for me. It's not a great logo, but it's better than all of the other ones, which are generally not good. So I'm going with Hills.
Tyler, which was your favorite?
I mean, that's really how I feel about about it. Is a long sigh. I mean, they're all not great. I think it's easier to say which one I like the least than
No,
to
you
say
have to
which
pick the
one.
one that you like the most out of all of them.
Oh, I mean, that guy did make a convincing argument for liking Hillary's. So it's like, that is, I mean, he's right. I mean, yeah, it kind of looks like the Twin Towers and a plane crashing into it. And, so people can really abstract that logo if they wanted to. You gave me a look, Taylor, but
I had never heard that theory before.
really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have different circles than you do because designers are really trying to find any way to. Really, he really convinced me with Rands. I think he had the most convincing argument. I think.
But was it your
For
favorite?
my favorite. Oh,
Yeah, no, I don't care what he thought. What's your favorite?
regardless of
Yeah, right. Who cares
political.
what he thinks? Which one? Yeah, which one did you like the best?
I mean, I think I will have to go with Rand. I think I
Okay.
will. Yeah,
No, that's good. That's
I think
good.
I like that one the most.
What was your favorite, Sean?
I think my favorite was. I don't think it was the best because that's my next question. But I think my favorite was probably. Man, I really want to say it was Ben Carson. I just love that he did so much stuff. I know that's the guy hated about it, but there was like the stars and the flag and all this stuff just crammed into one letter, and I loved it. I thought it was actually really cool. Like, of course, it doesn't make sense, but that's why I like it. So yeah, that was my
So you're
favorite.
saying it crossed the Maryland line.
Yeah.
The For those that aren't familiar, this is the line that the Maryland state flag is on, where it's so ugly it becomes cool for its own ugliness.
Oh yeah.
This was not my idea, by the way. I'm totally stealing this from the Hello Internet podcast.
But yeah, no, I
Right.
love it. It's like it's so like densely packed with iconography. I just love it.
That's fair.
It's like a American eagle with two machine guns in each claw.
Pretty much.
It's that American.
Okay, so which one was the best logo in your opinion? Not your favorite, was the best.
For me, the one that was the best as a logo, not necessarily like for a presidential campaign, is Rand. I think it's a really cool logo. Like, it would be a good brand logo. It just doesn't feel personable enough to be a presidential candidate. But I think
Mm.
it's a very effective, memorable logo.
That
Tyler?
being said, I say the opposite. I say Hillary's is probably the.
Why?
Uh, it's hard to not just piggyback off what the article basically said, but I definitely agreed that it was simple enough, it was unique enough, it works as an icon very well as opposed to Eagle A, or it's not like as generic as like a lot of the other like logos that politicians seem to come up with.
Hmm.
I mean, listen, nothing beats Obama like field sun, like there you can't beat that icon as in terms of design. So it's like, I don't know. It has to be Hillary. I don't know. I think it just
Yeah.
looks. It's the most ownable.
So I'm gonna go with Taylor on this one. I think the best was Rand. Just because you get his name, and I love the use of negative space. Because really, I never noticed there was a torch there until I watched the video, and then I was like, oh my god, that's genius! Like it's so cool. I couldn't believe it was there. And then I've always noticed the arrow in the FedEx, And I always thought that was like really cool, and I hope somebody whoever designed that made a ton of money off that. But I really like that. And but I guess this is okay, so I liked Hillary's a lot, but the reason that I feel like it's not the best is because as a campaign, as somebody who knows a little bit about campaigns, name recognition is a huge thing. We still haven't I would never advise a candidate not to use their name. It's a risky, bold move to use a letter um, to represent yourself, like Obama and Hillary are doing. But I think using, well, I don't know, maybe it was really good because I think if she's trying to make herself not look like she's trying to like move away from the Clinton brand and create her brand as Hillary in the same way that Jeb is moving away from the Bush brand and making himself as Jeb, then it's a good idea. But I think her H is similar to the Apple logo and the Obama O. And I feel like you get caught up in the idea and not the person. And I think it's a like this is a presidential politics is about the person. Um, and the person's ideas, not about the idea of the person. So
That's an interesting parallel both to Obama and to my topic later in the show, which is going to be about Apple as an ideal versus Apple as an actual reality. And I think that presidential campaigns are becoming more and more about, at least to a certain degree, more and more about branding. And I'm not talking about like political branding, like this is somebody's platform, but that kind of branding, like the Obama O with the sun in the field and like Apple logo style, meticulously crafted visual brands. And I think you're right. And to have an effective presidential campaign, like you want it to be about the person and not about the brand. But to get votes, particularly young votes, you need it to be about the brand. And it's this very strange contradiction of mindsets that we're in right now that I don't know how I feel about. And looking at all these logos really amplified that for me. Like you can tell that some of these logos are going after a very particular mindset and others are going after another one. And then some of them fall in between. And I think as a nation, we just don't really know what we want from our politicians right now. And these logos are really good evidence of that.
so do you have anything else to add, Tyler, at all? You want to
Sorry,
interject anything?
sorry, I'm on the case for the egg roll.
Oh no, it's
We'll talk about it in the cut, but
okay.
but I mean, I don't know. I feel like Taylor. I agree with Taylor, but I also think that I feel like, in my knowledge, either past, present, or future, I feel like the Obama logo is the only like presidential logo that I've ever like acknowledged as like something that was like of any actual design value at all. Because I don't know, I just it's always just like a name or like literally like an eagle or the flame. I don't think I've ever really encountered anything that really did anything that really stuck out to me. I feel like they really rely on the elephant or the donkey probably.
Okay, so my next question was, what's the deal with sans serif? This is really like a genuine question. I get that it's modern, but like everybody is investing in like so much stock in the sans serif. I just think like, can you guys tell me why?
Yes, I can tell you why. It is heavily associated with the technology brands that a lot of people are familiar with. Like, I mean, we're all using Macs right now. Everywhere you look on your Mac right now is all of the type is in San Francisco, which is a sans serif font that Apple developed. And if you open most Android devices, they're going to be running Arial, which is a port of Helvetica. Like, I think sans serifs are so heavily associated with our technology right now that it feels forward thinking, and therefore we want our politicians to feel forward thinking, and so we do all of their logos in the same fonts that we're used to seeing on, Facebook.
I mean, it's also just generally makes you not look old. Because because serif typefaces were the originals. that's where like they're like from kind of like when we were like doing like black letter, block lettering, even like scripting, like handwriting with fountain pen or not fountain pens, but quill pens and stuff like that. So it had its foundation in those styles. So that's why a sans serif feels modern because it is modern because
Hmm.
it takes away all the frills of times gone by that didn't like reflect like handwriting. So you have to have a very good reason to use a serif typeface in a modern in a contemporary setting, other than for things like books or like body copy. For like a logo, unless you're like specifically aiming at like kind of what the author of the article or the person in the videos in the article said that um, if you want to go for like a more conservative approach, then a serif is going to do a lot more work for you than a sans serif.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to see what serif fonts are used in these logos because even the ones that they're using aren't as traditional as they could be, right? Like
Right.
they're not your Times New Romans. I mean, like I don't know, the Bernie logo is a particularly interesting case where it's a serif typeface, but they're these very odd serifs that are almost like playful. They're not the sort of serifs that you see in normal like body copy text.
Well, it is a slab serif, which is a much more. You're right. It's a much more display based kind of typeface. It's very bulky. It's supposed to be very visually appealing.
Sans serif is. Do you think it was used because it is so It's such a psychologically heavy text or font.
I think to a certain degree. Um, I know Tyler and the other actual graphic designers out there are probably going to cringe at this reference. Um, but they talk in the documentary Helvetica, which has
It's
some
fine.
issues, um, about the reason why a lot of public signage is done in Helvetica, and it's because it feels very heavy. Like you said, it's very clear, it's very legible, and it's like very heavy. And I don't know, there's just something really authoritative about that. I think in the same way that like I'm trying to think something like book letter just doesn't have that sense of authority to it. It feels more frilly, it feels more literary.
I would just reiterate that it just feels more conservative. It reflects the bygone times, more conservative America.
Hmm.
It's pretty much what I would just stand by. I don't think it's necessarily authoritative. I would say it probably just makes you think about the good old days.
It's funny. I don't. I see when I look at these logos, I totally miss out on that.
Yeah, but you've never been one for nostalgia anyway.
Well, yeah, but you think like this is a logo that represents you and your entire brand that it should be able to communicate a.
Well, they're not pointing
But
at
maybe I
you.
read it, but maybe I read it in a different way. Maybe there's stuff that I see that you guys don't see.
I mean, you could also I mean, for you, it probably feels a little more professional, I guess. I guess that's you could also convey it as authoritative if it feels more professional, more high class, maybe.
Hmm.
It feels more noble. I don't know. Is that kind of what you're also feeling when you say like authoritative? No.
No, I
All
wouldn't say
right.
that any of these are necessarily authoritative.
Well, that's the word you used, didn't you? I don't
No,
remember.
no,
No, I used
Taylor
that
said it
word.
was
Oh,
authoritative.
okay. Well, what word did you use? I feel like you
Oh,
used an adjective.
no, it's like that these fonts are psychology driven.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I
Oh, for
think
sure, yeah.
Okay. So my next question is, if you had to vote for somebody solely based on their logo, solely, who would your vote go to?
Rand Paul.
I mean, I think it's also Rand Paul.
It's just an effective logo. It looks like a logo that's gonna get some shit done.
Right. I don't know. Because it's like Hillary's is just a little too basic for me. It's just a little too. It's like right there. It's like almost perfect for me. And I also want K6 to be maybe like, well, I don't know. Okay, I think we need to talk about K6 logo for just a second. It looks like a fucking like neo-Nazi like kind of flag. Like this is K6 Nation. This is like he rules with an iron fist. Like the American flag gets thrown out, and it's just like K.
I wish that the K was white and the stripes were red. I think having the whole thing as red makes it feel, yeah, just a little, I don't want to say fascist, but
Yes.
it just it loses some of its effect. His logo doesn't really have enough of the American flag in it to feel like a presidential logo. That's my issue with it.
Hmm.
What about you, Sean? If you had to pick just based on logos, who would you vote for?
Tough call. Um,
Let me just say, right before you say anything, I was all about Bernie's logo until he pointed out all the things with it when it's like the little eye, the star eye, a little too small. It's just a little too small.
That
And
logo is a death by a thousand cuts.
and then yeah, and then you're like, oh, that R in the end does look a little weird. And you're right, that does look like toothpaste. Fuck. Ah. But
I okay. I'm gonna go with Jeb.
oh my
You
god.
mean Jeb?
Yeah, just because of that. Like, there's something that's kind of like he was saying in the video. It forces you to be excited about it. And if I didn't know any better, and I wasn't looking at policy, I was just voting on logo. Like, you kind of think like, if his punctuation is correct, this guy's got to be like he's ready to go. Like he's excited and he's
See,
ready to
I
do
take
something.
the
You know?
opposite impression. I take the like. I don't want to say new Coke. Maybe like. Do you guys remember Upside Down Seven Up?
Yes.
DNL.
Yeah.
Yeah, this feels very like odd soda company pitch to me. Like, remember all the things you liked about that one thing? Here's that same thing, but with a bunch of things that are slightly different! Exclamation point! That's how that logo feels to me. Or maybe
And
it's
that,
like a health chip. You know, these things that aren't potato chips, but they're made of some kind of vegetable and they're supposed to be good for you, but they're really not. That's what that logo also reminds me of. Like veggie chips.
thanks for hating on my favorite logo, guys. I appreciate it.
Sorry,
whoa, whoa, whoa,
I
whoa,
really
whoa,
don't
whoa.
like that logo.
I think it's fun. I mean, you're allowed to like it. I mean, it's certainly listen. It's the top cut compared to half of these. All right, let's go down this list. But Jeb, all right, pretty good. Ben Carson, completely. I don't give a fuck. Christie, don't care. All right, Hillary's pretty good. Ted Cruz, forget about it. If you had whoever the fuck this is, don't care. Bad. Kasich, pretty good. Rand, great.
Wait. You're gonna say that Kasich is good after what you just said previously.
I mean, if you want a neo-Nazi like fascist America, I mean that sounds like a pretty effective tool. All right, Rand, pretty good. Rubio, we're not gonna talk about it. Bernie, uh, Trump, not even gonna talk about it. All right, so out of those, I mean, it's at least top five, top six.
I just
He's
have
heard that. He's heard that since March.
Right.
I just have two words for you. Please clap.
Is design important?
Absolutely. All right, next topic.
Yeah, I think it is. I think Tyler's right. I don't know. So Sean, mailed me this book, The Architecture of Happiness, which I've been reading. And it talks about how a lot of people find architecture kind of pointless or self-indulgent of like, oh, I can design this pretty building, and so I'm going to because it's pretty and it keeps me employed. But the author argues like there is something inherent about certain designs of buildings or homes or spaces that makes us feel a certain way. And if we can design things that make us feel better, then design is worthwhile. I think that's especially true in politics. Like, if we can have designs that make us feel confident about our politicians,
Mm.
then I am all in on campaign design.
I agree with you there. I think that's partially why I was attracted to Jeb's logo is because you get like the gist of Jeb. You read it and if the first time you see the exclamation point, you're kind of excited and it's 2016 and it kind of establishes it as who he is. The one that I hated the most is Carly Fiorina's.
Oh, I hate that
When
logo.
I look at
Yes.
it, it makes me think it looks like an airline logo, and Trump's is the most generic, like insert name on into banner here with a slogan.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's logo honestly looks like he made it on politicallogos.com.
It looks like it's a pre-made bumper sticker that like a business card.
Hmm. He probably got it on Vistaprint.
I really think he should have gone with gold. I don't think he should have given up that.
That's
I
his
think that
aesthetic.
I think that's his color to claim.
It
And
also
he
matches his hair.
and he should have. Well, that's what I mean. And that's not like a bad thing either. Like I think that's he should go on that, and he totally let it go to do like red, white, and blue number, which is just not contrasting at all. Ugh.
I mean, listen, a car like almost like a cutout of Trump's head, like just like golden like Trump head, probably would have just made a great logo, and I probably would have just voted for that on the spot.
I have so little faith in you as an engaged citizen of this country.
Oh,
Hey, listen. No, the question was which if you had to vote for it, not knowing anything else. Because I could tell that when you gave your answer about Jeb, that you were placing some of what you already had known about him onto his logo, and
Yeah.
you weren't just looking at it for what it was.
It still feels like something that would come out of a branding department at like Coke or Pepsi. You can't deny that.
Tell me that those aren't good brands.
he's not wrong.
Maybe it's not what I look for in a politician. But
He likes
that's fine.
RC.
He probably does like RC.
No, you like
Oh.
RC.
I like RC. I think it's fine. It's a good solo.
It's a perfectly good alternative to a cola that you probably somehow missed when you were shopping in the grocery store, but you were too lazy to go back, and it happened to be on a shelf, and you're like, "This is a cola I can drink." All right, everybody, we got an egg roll update. It turns out that the dough is made out of egg with flour, water, and salt, and other ingredients. But spring rolls do not have the egg portion.
So they're called egg rolls because there's egg in the dough.
Right. Well, you know what? When you
So-
Wikipedia it, it doesn't exactly tell you that, okay?
But what you're saying is my on the spot guess was right.
You know what, Taylor? I don't even remember the context of why we were even looking that
that
up.
was a pretty half-hearted guess there. It's like saying, what's in a hamburger? Well, there might be a ham in it. Like you just
Whatever. Let's talk about what we're actually here to talk about. Our second topic this week comes from Tyler. Tyler, what do you have for us?
Hey everybody, I'm going to talk about the history of Japan, and specifically, History of Japan by Bill Wirtz. I heard about this video from a Vlogbrothers video, in which Hank kind of like shouted out this video, and I thought it was very interesting. It kind of takes Japan up until like post World War II, and kind of condenses it down into a absurdist, like abstracted, like version of Japan's history, kind of like that Max Landis video I had us watch a few weeks ago. It was very much in that same style, in which it's kind of like very simplified, like modern take on it. So what I want to know is, who is this for, and is it for like people who know about Japanese history, or for people who don't know about Japanese history?
So I want to lead briefly with the way I discovered this video. Somebody posted this in either, well, I guess they would have posted it in the Hello Internet subreddit with the link title, if CGP Grey did a bunch of cocaine. Because if you've ever watched a CGP Grey video, it's very similar to this, but a lot more straight-laced. And so I had that, like, running through my head as I was watching it. But I think it's a similar audience. It's the curious person who doesn't know a whole lot about the eccentric subject matter. Like, I know nothing about the history of Japan, but I like internet videos about history, so this is probably for me.
I think it's
John?
for a lot of people. I don't know. I found the humor in it. But I also think that it was, at least from what I know about Japan's history, pretty straightforward to the facts. So yeah, I mean, as much as you could talk about an entire country's history in 7 minutes, I mean, let's just be real. Like, I think you did a pretty good job. So that's why I think it's for a lot of people. If you're just interested in Japan, if you want to know more, I could definitely see somebody in high school, some high school history class, being like, "I'm going to write about Japan," and then referencing this as like their number one source of information. They just type in "history of Japan" into YouTube, and this is what they get.
They hire a samurai. So I definitely think that Taylor was on point, and that it's kind of for the same people that CGP Grey writes to or makes videos for. That's actually really, really interesting. I didn't think about this as like kind of like a CGP Grey video at all, but it totally is right in that same wheelhouse of edutainment, I guess.
Magic School Bus.
It's a little more grown up than the Magic School Bus. These are like the United Kingdom explained type videos. I don't know if you know particularly who CGP Grey is, Sean.
No.
I'll send you some links and put some links in the show notes. Very good YouTuber / podcaster. He made the Humans Need Not Apply video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know that one.
Right. So, does this absurdist interpretation of history make for a more engaging experience? Does the supplementary video I gave you guys help understand kind of like where he was coming from with some of his depictions of history?
I'm going to be honest. I thought his dank memes were a bit of a distraction from the history. The video you sent us along with this that had the vocal harmonizing and the weird like sing-songy stuff gave me some context for his style. And I actually kind of like the moments where he like sort of sings elements of this video.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's cool. But there are a couple moments in here where it just gets a little too dank for me. Like, it feels like he's trying too hard to cash in on meme culture.
Right.
And
You
I
mean a
would
little
rather-
too fresh. His memes are a little too fresh, as we discussed in the meme episode.
Yeah, his memes are a little too fresh. Sorry, our resident memeologist, Tim Miller, is going to be very upset that I used the wrong terminology. I mean, I just think his memes are too fresh.
Yeah, I mean, after I liked the video, I guess when I watched his like other video that you posted on there, I was kind of like, I couldn't see myself watching that. But
Links to both will be down in the description.
the history of Japan one, I could definitely see myself. If you did like a series of histories, I would subscribe to that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's an important part of it. I don't know if he'll continue to do those videos, but I would really like to see sort of like just an overall like sort of like progression, because I think it's really cool. I would agree that some of the dank fresh memes are a little out of place or a little too much. So then I guess what the question is if you take away that, isn't it just a CGP Grey video without the like actual information? It's just kind of like a threadbare like piece of history. There's not like a whole lot of substance.
It's hard because history, particularly this much history, it's really hard to make it entertaining.
Don't tell Quentin Tarantino that.
I know. This particular style is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so my immediate reaction to it is like, he's gone too far
Mm-hmm.
into that. But I'm also not the audience for this. Like, I don't know.
Right. You want your information a little more focused, a little more. I'm for information's sake, not for like entertainment.
Right. And like, I'm the kind of person who reads history books like as a hobby. And
Nerd.
so says the guy who mails me history books through the physical mail. Um, so like the CGP Grey style, that's a lot more like, there are little winks and nods of jokes in there, but he's mostly just telling you the history. That feels more in my comfort zone than this did, where like he's interrupting his own story to like make a weird joke or like do some kind of strange representation of something. I don't know. It just, I appreciated it and I was like impressed by the amount of work that went into it. I don't know that I would subscribe.
Right. So that's an interesting point that we, in the last question, said that it is for the same group of people that would like a CGP Grey video. But you're kind of saying the opposite, because I would say you're pretty much his target demographic, I would say.
Well, I think there's going to be a wide spectrum of people in any large audience, like, I mean, Gray has 2 million subscribers on YouTube. Not all of those people are going to have the same tastes. And so there are definitely people in his existing audience that like this. But me personally, not for me. I think it might be an age thing too. Um, I could see, some of, like, I don't know. I could see somebody like Nathan, friend of the show, who is 16, really enjoying this video. Like, just because it feels like it's aimed at a younger target, I guess, is my point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to single Nathan out. I just think, like, based on what I know about him and his internet tastes, I'm probably going to send him this link.
He is our teen correspondent, so
Hashtag teen correspondent.
maybe if it was more condensed, maybe if there was, maybe if it was like a two-part episode would just be the wrong thing to do, because then you would just lose people completely. Because I think almost the point of it being made was to make it viral at least a little bit, because obviously you found it from one place and I found it from another in two completely different like wheelhouses of the internet. So obviously there was an intent for it to go viral. But I would say maybe focusing on one subject of Japanese history, and maybe like kind of like getting a more like laser focused version of it, because like he had to cover a lot of time period, and that probably filled up a lot of time that probably could have been better spent actually giving you information. Like he's like, well, this guy happened, and then this guy moved to here and here and here and here and here. You're like, okay, well, I didn't gather any information from any of that. Maybe if he like focused on just one period, he could get more information delivered. I don't know.
I don't necessarily know how much of this video, not only because it was supposed to be a meme, but like if you were supposed to necessarily, this isn't you're not supposed to be reading a book. It's not like a college lecture or something like that. It's supposed to be kind of the quick and fast is what I got from it, and I think it did a good job. That's what I mean. I don't know. It's not a college course. I mean, let's just be real. Like, I know a little bit about Japanese history, but not like early Japanese history. It's mostly just later Japanese history, and I think he did a good job. Like how he's supposed to remember all the names of the emperors or something like that. Like, nah, I can't imagine that most of the people. I mean, I don't even know all the names of the presidents. You know what I mean? And there's only
you
been
went to
44
school
of
for
them.
that.
So I don't know. That's what I think. Like, I was thinking if he did this version, it was like the history of America. Granted, that has been not around for nearly as long as Japan. It would still take you 10 minutes to do it if you wanted to do even the most surface job of it, probably. You know what I mean? Like, or like
Although,
he might, like he seemed to spend almost 2 minutes on like modern Japan
yeah.
since 1800.
Yeah, that's the part that like we talked earlier about this being a series. I think in some ways certain countries are easier than others. Which sounds like a very like Western American thing to say, like, oh, your history just doesn't matter as much. But I think every country, including the United States, goes through periods of stagnation that nothing really interesting happens and we don't really need to talk about it. The problem is some countries have a lot to talk about, and creating a viral video of all of the important or impactful things from a particular country could take 20 minutes. I mean, think about Great Britain having to deal with all the different colonies and the kings and the queens, and then the deconstruction of the empires following the Second World War. Like, that is a long video. I don't know how sustainable this is as a series. I'd be very interested to see what that looks like.
Right.
I mean, I think from what I know of Japanese history, I can remember from the video, what he touched on was like the formation of a new language, the formation of Soto Zen, the formation of the different large restructurings in government, different kinds of ruling stuff, like things that you would cover in like a middle school civics class. And I think that was a good job. I think that's why it almost seems like hard to critique it, because I think, especially when it's supposed to be memeable, you're not can't really make it heavy.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm like really thinking about it, and I'm like, how did this video get 5 million views? Is it because the
Well,
right people saw it?
Honestly, I think it's a valuable use of your 7 minutes. Like,
I agree.
yeah, the aesthetic isn't necessarily what I'm looking for, but content-wise, this is, some of the best 7 minutes I spent on YouTube in the last week.
I mean, to be fair, I also watched like 3 hours of Hearthstone gameplay like in a week, so you're probably right. Okay,
Do you have anything else?
yeah, one last question. All right, so did you learn anything? Which I think we already did. We already discussed that. But did it compel you to read more into a topic that was featured?
There's a lot of interesting stuff in Japanese art that I've always wanted to study more. The problem is like the Japanese art that I'm particularly interested in, like visually, is from the imperial stuff that like I don't really care about the history and politics. I just want to know about the art. And it's all like tangled together, and that's why I've never really like paid much attention to it. So yeah, it was nice to have some context for like why I enjoyed this particular period of Japanese art. I don't know if I'm gonna go read a book about it because I really just don't care about the politics. Sorry, Sean.
Right. I guess it's a little different because I'm kind of sort of like I use information in a very different way that I feel like than you use information, because I'm typically trying to gather it for like artistic purposes and trying to like assimilate that into like my knowledge banks to like use in like artistic applications, I guess, like in drawing or whatever the fuck. So, but I feel like yours is almost more of like a self-fulfillment. Like you feel like knowledgeable and you generally can like discuss with people about these topics and you can like relate to things if people bring it up in a conversation. Would that be fair?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking like, why do I read and why do I like to learn things? And I think it's that. It's like I enjoy having discussions with people about stuff. That's part of the reason why I started this podcast.
Right.
And so there's just not as much that I am like interested in discussing in imperial Japanese history anyway. Like some of the more modern stuff is really fascinating to me, but as far as imperial Japan goes, I'm really just in it for the art.
Ready for a huge nerd alert? If anything, this reminded me about how I forgot how Japanese Parliament was set up. So I kind of want to go back and figure out exactly how Japanese Parliament works again and the nuances between the Constitution that America established for them post World War II.
That was an interesting fact I didn't realize is that we helped establish a westernized government in Japan post World War II,
Yeah, that was fascinating.
which makes sense as to our recent, or like I guess recent, within the last like 10 years, our kind of like dealings with the Middle East kind of make a little bit more sense to me now. I'm like, oh, so that's why we just kind of set up some governments for other people.
Theirs is probably one of the more interesting cases, particularly because they have a pacifist constitution. But that might be called into question if you read up on current events. There's a dispute between China and Japan about some of the islands south of Japan. So a lot of stuff going on there right now, geopolitically.
All right, so our third topic this week comes from me, and I'm not going to lie, I am totally taking a topic that I listened to on another podcast this week, but I'm doing it for a very particular reason. So, I think it was last week's Accidental Tech podcast, which if you're a nerd, you should be listening to ATP. It's amazing. They did an entire episode on one article by CNET's, well, previously CNET's, now Recode's Walt Mossberg. Walt is a very influential tech journalist. And Walt is saying in this article basically what the guys on ATP have been saying for a couple of years now, and a bunch of people around the internet have been saying forever, that Apple, for everything that they do well, has really been letting us down in terms of software over the last year to year and a half. And as a podcast built and run entirely on Apple devices, I wanted to weigh in on this, if for no other reason than it's another group of people telling Apple to get their shit together. So I will put the link to the Mossberg article in the notes. I will also put a link to the whole ATP episode if you want to listen to that. There's some really great points about iTunes and the new Photos app in there and why they're both really shitty right now. But I guess my first question for the panel is, based on the Walt Mossberg article, have you seen any of the same issues?
No. I don't want to crap on this guy because I'm sure that he's like really into this stuff. But I feel like most of what he said, when was this published?
Like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, was already said by so many more people as soon as El Capitan came out. It was all the same people that were saying Photos isn't that good, Mail doesn't update. It just seemed like it was everything that they wanted to change with the new operating system that wasn't perfectly flawless. People were already hopping on it from day one. Just go on the App Store and look at the reviews. You're going to see these same things. So no, by the time I read this, I was already aware of everything. In fact, updating to this particular system, I kind of knew what I was getting into, which is fine because I don't really use any of this stuff that much, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but you've seen the same issues, right?
Yeah.
Now that you've updated?
Well, not really. Like, I mean, I don't use Apple email. I use Spotify for most of my music. Not a big deal. Photos, I take them on my phone. That's about it.
So you're really not running any of the Apple apps that they're talking about?
No.
I'm not either.
Who does?
I think that's
I
the
do.
point.
Do you run? I don't know. I guess I just think this was really weird for me because it's like when you buy Microsoft, and you get the whole package like Microsoft Student or something, and they give you all the programs, and people are on there complaining about Entourage, and I'm like, who even uses that? Who uses this? Like, I don't. It seems like most of the kinks have been worked out in like Excel and PowerPoint and Word. I'm not going to say that Apple hasn't dropped the ball because they have, and it's been a big drop. But to say that, certain programs are going to have problems just seems like somebody just jumping on Apple because, it's the newest cool kid thing to do. Like, I'm not about to let somebody say that Apple is the new Microsoft because
No,
you
no.
were
I
dead
don't
wrong
think that's what
saying
anybody's
that.
saying here. People are saying here, and how I feel is that we buy Apple products because they're supposed to symbolize excellence in a way. You know, like your Mac is supposed to be this perfect piece of machinery. Your iPhone is supposed to be like this amazing device that you use for everything all day long. The problem is that recently it's felt like it's getting harder and harder to do certain things that you expect these devices to do. And some of those problems feel like they are direct results of Apple's internal decisions, not necessarily just, like, oh, the app crashed, because apps do that sometimes. They feel like deliberate choices that just aren't being made very well. Does that make sense?
Right. I'd agree.
I don't know.
So, like, to give you an
I
example,
don't know. I don't
Sean,
know about
like,
what these people are saying on the inside. That
well,
I can't say is like utterly has no conspiratorialness within
well, no,
its
I don't want to make it
statement at
sound
all.
conspiratorial, but it's things like, have you ever updated a contact on your phone and then you open contacts on your Mac and the contact's not there?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So if you think
Yeah,
about,
it's frustrating. So,
yeah, but if you think about an app like Dropbox, there is a refresh button, and you push the button and it refreshes and it tells you this file didn't sync, and you know exactly which one. If you try and refresh your contacts app, there is no refresh button. It's just supposed to magically work because Apple doesn't want you to have a refresh button, because that would imply that their app isn't always refreshing itself. And that would look bad. And so instead, they give you no option to manually refresh. And then when your sync fails, they don't tell you why or even that it failed. Your contact's just not there.
well, the first thing I guess that I think about when it comes to that, just because I've had this particular problem happen, is do I need to plug my phone into my computer? I mean, does does iCloud account for all this? I really don't know. Like that's just an honest question.
It,
Um,
and that's
like
another part of it, is that
how much of it is user error versus
I don't think
system
Apple
error?
does a very good job of explaining that, because that should all be iCloud. But the fact that you, as a multi Apple device owner, don't know that about iCloud probably says a lot about how well they're communicating what iCloud actually does.
Right.
We've established that there is a problem. I think
Yeah.
there's probably more of a problem than you guys do. But my question now is, what is your personal big tiny Apple annoyance? Like a tiny problem with your Apple device that just repeatedly bothers you.
That I can't delete all these dumpster garbage apps that I never use. Mail, stocks. When have I ever used that before? I don't use Safari. I don't know what even videos even means. What does videos mean? I've never even opened it, but I'm like, I'm not watching videos on my iPhone. Notes, I got Evernote. iBooks, well, I got the Kindle app, so and then there's like Wallet, which I just haven't utilized. And there's Keynote, and I don't know why I'm writing a paper or making a presentation on my phone.
Sean, what's your big little Apple problem?
I don't know. I feel like I don't. It's not a big deal to me. Like, if anything, I'm more frustrated with wondering, maybe even like rationalizing whether or not Apple does things to like make its own devices obsolete. Um, like only giving you 16 gigs on an iPhone is absolutely ridiculous. How come in Japan, to reference another thing, can have 90% of their phones are waterproof, and in America, if you drop yours, the screen cracks and it cuts your finger open? I don't get it. I just don't understand how Apple, the technology company that was for 10 years ahead of everybody else on pretty much doing everything that was great, somehow Steve Jobs dies and the whole like progressive geist of an entire corporation, which was number one in terms of stock price until recently, and everything just goes out. Like the whole wind was sucked out of them, and that's what's frustrating. Okay, so next week they're releasing an iPhone 5 with iPhone 6 guts inside of it.
So, my biggest problem with Apple programs, like Apple software at the moment, is this problem of syncing. I mentioned it before with contact syncing. I have the same problem with calendar syncing. Sometimes I have this problem with mail. It shouldn't be this hard to sync data that is very simple. Like, contacts are not complicated data sets. They're at most like 5 or 6 variables. You can fit them in one row in an Excel spreadsheet. It shouldn't be that hard to sync that across the cloud from my phone to my computer. Yet somehow my contacts are an absolute mess. And probably every 6 months, I have to go through and change all sorts of stuff around in my contacts because I end up with like 4 of the same person in there. And I don't know why. This seems like a problem that should have been solved in the first version of iCloud. And the whole point of having a Mac or having an iPhone is like, this device is so well designed that anyone can use it. They just can't always use it as effectively as it's supposed to be used, which is freaking infuriating.
Kind of like how no one knew how to actually close apps down for like 3 iPhone generations.
It's such a frustrating topic.
It is, because like I spent so much money on these devices and I love them so much that I want them to just work a little bit better. So this week on another podcast, the talk show with John Gruber, Eddie Q, who is in charge of music and cloud services, and Craig Federighi, who is on the software team at Apple, actually came on and did like an hour-long interview, which never happens with senior people at Apple. And one of the things they said, particularly relating to some issues with iCloud stuff, is Apple isn't as small as it was anymore. You know, there are significantly more devices that are connected to these services now. And so while they try and find all these bugs, there's a much higher like quality bar because tens of millions of people, when the update comes out, are turning on this brand new piece of software. And you don't know how the system's going to react to having that many people. Not to mention, you don't know what specific thing that person's going to do that you maybe didn't test for that causes an issue.
Right.
And so on some level, I feel sympathy for them because this may actually be the most people turning over onto a software update in computing history every time an iOS release comes out. For the problems that you have, can you think of another software solution or another company that solves that problem better? So to give an example, like I have serious issues with my contacts that I never had when I was on a Droid and using Google Contacts. Never had these problems.
I mean, the last time I had a non-iPhone, I was basically in high school, so it's been a while. Proto high school, I probably even.
That's fair. Sean?
I am totally enveloped within the Apple everything. So anything that I know that's better is probably an app on
But
Apple.
you use Spotify instead of iTunes.
Yeah. Well, I would use iTunes if I didn't have to pay $10 a month for it. That's just a personal thing, though.
That's fair. See, I use iTunes with Apple Music, and that app is completely unreliable. For some reason, I pay them my money instead of Spotify, and I'm not entirely sure why, to be honest.
Because it was a good value proposition the first month you had it.
Yeah. It's a long story. I could talk about that for an hour.
Right.
So, my final question, and then we can move on. How do these things affect your perception of the Apple brand and of the Apple ecosystem? I feel like we've touched on this a good bit, but I mean, how does this make you feel about your supposedly easy to use devices?
Right. Well, I had a, not necessarily a crisis, but I had this weird moment when I had my iPad and my iPhone sitting here and I was on my computer and all of a sudden all 3 of the FaceTimes went off all at once on all of my devices and I'm like, why is this happening? Who thought this was a good idea? And then it's like, and I just scrambled to figure out what was going on and it's like, it's just so much sad. It's just don't get it. And then it's like, not no, like my mother or probably most a normal person couldn't figure out how the fuck to turn FaceTime off of this device, ever, never. They could never do it, and that would probably happen to them for the rest of their life, and they would just throw their shit out the window because that's what I almost end up doing. So it makes me feel pretty good, to use this nice and elegant computer system. But as soon as like stuff like that happens, I'm like, it's a good thing you're sexy, Apple.
I want to agree with Tyler and say that, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I experienced that same issue with FaceTime on my computer and my phone. I think my app aggravation has to come not from apps, but from operating systems, because I feel like Apple they update operating systems so much that, like, it almost makes their computers obsolete within a certain amount of time, and not a long period of time too. I'm talking like in a matter of like 3 or 4 years. You have to get a new one because you don't have enough RAM that was pre-installed on your hermetically sealed laptop to run the new operating system, and you're stuck with this obsolete machine. Bless you. That's not that old.
I agree with you and disagree with you, Sean, because I've just been in like the 3-year computer upgrade cycle for the longest time. And that's probably just a function of the kind of work that I do more than anything. But for me, this makes me honestly just really sad, because I think we can all agree that we use Apple devices because they are the best for the particular types of things that we do on our computers. The problem is that our Apple devices just aren't where we want them to be for the amount of money and time that we spend on them. And the thing that makes me sad about it is I feel like Apple knows that. And it seems like they are a company not in crisis, but in a state of confusion of like, it's kind of a death of a thousand cuts situation. There are so many small problems that we could fix that we honestly don't know which ones to invest time in. And until a vocal group of people picks out a particular problem, like has happened with photos in iTunes this go around, I think they're not going to fix problems with contacts. Like, we as the Apple user base have to essentially create an outrage to drum up enough support internally at Apple to get our problems solved. And even then, like Sean said, it's still going to be, 3 years down the line, we're going to buy new devices. There's going to be a new OS. It's going to have a new feature in it that's going to be buggy, and we're just going to go through this same problem. I don't know that this is a problem with a solution, but I'm hoping for a little bit faster, I guess, success rate, or a faster fix rate on these bugs. All right, and with that, it's time to round out our episode number 46, the way we have every episode for the last year, with some shameless plugs, starting as always with Tyler Sneezy Panda Reed.
I was like, is it me? Is it me? Hi, everybody. Last week we did our ASMR shameless plugs. This week, sorry, you're just gonna have to go search up somebody crinkling up some paper on your own. All right, so you can find my work at tylerdreed.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at TDRDesign. Continuing to do some Dungeons and Dragons themed posts, so go ahead and check those out. I'd really appreciate it. Let's talk, hang out, and go on adventure. Bye.
Sean, shameless plugs from you.
Yeah, find me on any social media that you won't find me on. Those might include Twitter and Facebook, and if anything, you should probably check out our WordPress articles. I've been writing a whole bunch of those. So there'll probably be an update this week of the GOP bracket, just because there's been a lot of toss-up going on lately. Hope to see you guys next week.
All right, and shameless plugs from me. You can find me on Twitter at TCOLMSTEAD. You can find the show on Twitter at Dudes Brunch. You can like us on Facebook. You can give us a review on iTunes. We would really, really appreciate that. It's how new people find the show. We're also going to have new merch with our new logo and maybe our new slogan and just new things to buy to help us pay for the show. That would be really awesome of you. And that's it. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week for more brunch.
Alright, so we got the turtle mouse. He's right in view. And we gotta sneak up to him real close. We gotta creep up, and we gotta flip him over. Then we jab him. Jab right in the belly.